Living Dead's the song that I composed straight after a relationship that had gone sour. And rather than sort of dwell on the breakup of the relationship, I thought that I'd put all those emotions or whatever into a song. And it it turned out as a kind of a horror movie kind of song. So that tells you something about the relationship I was in. But it was kind of making the comparison between the way I was feeling and the way a zombie who is somebody who's just kind of going through the motions or whatever, but has feels as though they're no longer able to really touch or feel or taste. It's almost like you're just going through the motions of life, because that's how I kind of felt after breaking up with this particular person I was with for 5 years. And it's kind of, there's a bit of levity going on with it, but actually it was kind of a serious attempt to try and get over the relationship through a creative process. But I think it came out pretty good in that it's not one of those slash your wrist kind of the relationship over kind of things. Right. And I think it's a lot of people still come up to me and say it's a well-regarded kind of song from that album, Endangered Species, which was a particularly fine album.
In other words, your mum loves it.
Yeah.
Or no, she doesn't.
So, Alvin again, I'm afraid.
What, me again? Cyberjunk. Oh God. Yeah, it's about how the proliferation of the dumbing down of television, and how technology somehow has kind of blunted people, and how technology can be used as a tool to control and sort of push people in a direction that's beneficial to governments as opposed to individuals or society. And that's the basic premise of it. It's cyberjunk is a lot of people now are spending a lot of time in front of their computers, and they're taking in a lot of information, which the great majority of which is superfluous. And it's a great way of feeding people the information that governments want them to have, as opposed to the sort of information that people should have in a broader sense, to be able to make to develop their own opinion.
Lie Down and Die. We were in a residential studio in Surrey, and Endangered Species album, and it was one of the later songs that we did for that album, and I wrote put the music all together, and had a couple of alternative endings, and we had a impromptu discussion about how we should end the song, which ending we should use, and in the end I said
all of them.
Use of all of them. So you'll hear.
He's got a great idea, haven't you, about doing a whole song of endings?
Yeah, I would like to do a song that starts and it's 3 minutes of just endings. You know, I thought that would be quite funny.
For
and,
3 minutes.
Saved up, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll write more
an album.
endings, you know, just a whole 3 minutes of endings with somebody singing over it. It'd be kind of fun. But that's what the story of the ending. When you hear the song, you'll see it's got 3 endings on it.
And yeah, I think that idea's been done. It's called Emo Core.
Oh, really? I thought it was a good idea.
Ice Age. It's part of the atmospheric B-side of the Endangered Species, which I wrote most of the songs as a radical departure from the UK subs sound up until that point, as a reaction against a new wave of copyists who all sounded the same. And I thought, wow, you know, I don't want us to sound like everybody else. So I came up with a few songs destined to be the B-side of this album that was much more atmospheric. Ice Age, Sensitive Boys, Divide by 8, Multiply by 5, and Flesh Wound, and Charlie's the lyricist on that.
Right. Sensitive Boys.
as I say, Nicky will write a song, write the music, and I can't write until I get in the studio and actually hear us perform it in the studio live. And it's only then when things start to hit my imagination. And the music is like a painting to me. You know, they've just got colours and everything, and you know, I just get sparks and ideas off the music. And every good piece of music has got 1,000 sparks to work on, so it's no problem. He can just the better the music, the more sparks fly off it, and there's a song. It's easy.
Oh, incidentally, Ice Age and Sensitive Boys have been rarely, if at all, performed in 20 years. Mainly due to Steve, because Steve was the drummer on that, and I think we experimented a couple of times doing it over the years with other people, and it's never been quite right. So this will be the first time for about 20 years that they've really been performed.
Yeah. This is a Steve beat.
Yeah, no one can do it.
And that also goes for a few of the other songs, like Lie Down and Die is the first time for a while as well.
And he's at 5.
Emotional Blackmail.
That I specifically wrote that as an opener for the second album. In the great tradition of early 70s rock music, where they started off with perhaps a slightly faster song, hit them between the eyes with the first song. It was always meant to be the opening track for the second album. Again, Charlie wrote the lyrics. Almost everything that I write, Charlie writes the lyrics for.
I remember at your flat,
Except
when
for
you said, I've got this idea, and
that's it.
you had that little box thing that and you went, da-la, da-la, da-la. I thought it was great.
But that was when you were playing in Cyanide, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Left for Dead was a hastily constructed little ditty which was on the B-side of Teenage, and actually became that we always put 2 tracks on the B-side of every 7-inch, because firstly our songs were quite short, and secondly no one else was really doing that, so they were really like little 3-song EPs. And it was one of the best received B-sides of any of our singles. It was coupled with New York State Police, and it was quite a good B-side.
Rockers.
I love Rockers. Rockers is a very old song. When we wrote it, it was called Totters. Born a totter, die a totter, hap the gypsies. Something happened.
First I heard about it.
It's true. That's absolutely true.
Yes, something happened.
What's the totter?
Gypsy.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, you know that.
Sorry.
Any old iron.
Any gypsies that are watching your tents? You know.
Anyway,
yeah, thanks,
no,
Charlie. You've ruined ourselves
we had
gypsies now.
There goes the
We used
gypsy
to have
market.
we used to have
gypsies,
pretty good
gypsy sales.
We've been trying for years to get in the gypsy market, and you've ruined
Oh
it.
yeah. Crash Course.
Yeah, Crash Course was a song.
What were you talking about?
I don't know.
Was the last song to be written for the
Gypsies in
first
my family.
album.
I'm not frightened.
No, I'm not frightened. I'm not bothered about gypsies.
We needed another song for the first album because the time was a little short, and
That must be my musical background.
no gypsies were involved in the recording of
No
Crash
gypsies
Course.
were harmed in the
But
recording.
the producer was John McCoy, who was in the Ian Gillan band. He was the producer of the first album, and
He was a gypsy.
very late at night at the end of the recording, he and I did that song together. He played drums and I played guitar and did a little kind of demo version of it, and then when the guys came in the next day we recorded it, so it was the last song recorded for Another Kind of Blues.
And then they made some pegs.
Endangered Species.
Endangered Species was the same deal as Emotional Blackmail. It was always meant to be an opening track for the Endangered Species album.
Time and Matter.
Oh, that's a
Alvin.
classic.
Oh, that's from
Alvin,
Diminished
that's a-
Responsibility.
That wasn't
Great.
yours.
Time.
It was.
There's a genius over there. But good God.
Time and Matter was a song on Diminished Responsibility, which was the first album that Steve
Get some pings
and I
for a
played
friend.
on for the UK subs.
Cool, yeah. Hey?
Hello, calm down. Look, it's not big and it's not clever. Anyway,
It's big.
yeah, it is. Thank you.
Oh dear.
Oh God, I've forgotten. Oh yeah, Time and Matter. We were short for some songs. We were doing the album. I think there was several songs that were pre-prepared for the record, and then we were short by 3 or 4 songs. And I happened to have this sort of chord sequence, which I then pitched to the band, and we started playing it. And Charlie came up with some excellent lyrics, and before you know it, we had a song, which we're playing tonight. I think once again it's one of those songs that we haven't played for about 20 years. So that's another one of those.
But everybody else has.
But yeah, other people have,
think-
and other people have covered that song and
I got
recorded it, I
some-
believe.
It's a great song.
We played in this gig up northeast somewhere, right? A place called Nelson, Horatio, up northern. And there was a band, and they played like 3 of our new numbers from that new album.
Which new album?
Well, the one we just done.
Universal.
Yeah, yeah, no, not
Quintessential.
Quintessential.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Cool.
It's like amazing, you know. But a lot of bands have covered Time and Matter. Quite a few bands.
What was the inspiration for that Time and Matter?
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. We're going way back.
1979.
Yeah, this is when I was in Cairo.
During the war.
Oh,
With George
we're talking
Melly.
about my memoirs now.
We were on tour with the Police.
Yeah,
We were
right.
on tour
Okay,
with
yeah,
the Police.
yeah,
Really?
yeah. We done some shows with the Police in a US tour, and of course, you know, we were getting mobbed like the Police and everything. You know, English, you know, good-looking guys like us. You know.
Oh, that's the
And
credibility.
we had our number plate of our truck stolen, and we had to go upstate New York. And of course, these guys came along, you know, in the long trench coats and cowboy hats and stuff, and arrested us for having a false. Well, we tried to make it out of cardboard and gaffer tape. That's all we had, and but they stopped us, and that was a New York State true story.
Down on the Farm was a song that we cobbled together last minute for the album Endangered Species. I had the sort of chord structure or whatever. I had the verses, I think, and had the middle 8. I don't think I had a chorus section, the music for a chorus section. Nikki provided that, and then we'd been at this place called Jacobs, which is like in the middle of nowhere in Kent. And we were surrounded by fields and horses and cows and sheep, and we're sort of city lads, really. Well, certainly Charlie and I are.
But the sex was good.
I was just thinking,
I
that's the time and I do.
Well, yeah, the sex was good, but Charlie got pretty pissed off by being in a situation where he wasn't close to the Marquee and close to the various bars that we used to go to on a regular basis. So in his frustrations, when I presented this music to him, he started writing these lyrics all about how everything stinks of horse crap down on the farm, and I'd rather be back in solo and down on the farm. And it was kind of a jokey song, you know, something that we just used for Charlie to put all his lyrical frustrations with being out in the middle of the country and breathing in all this clean air. And lo and behold, years go by, and Guns N' Roses decide to cover it, and they put it on the Spaghetti Instant album, which was a platinum album.
But the litigation was against our own publishers, who were about to run off with the money. So we got solicitors to close them down before they could run off with all our money, like they've always done. And we used the Guns N' Roses money to pay for the court case, and we won because they were taking all our money. And then in the future, you know, after that, so No, it wasn't nothing to do with Guns N' Roses. The money from your songs you write automatically goes to you or goes to your publisher. You know, in our case, our dirty, rotten South African publishers were taking all our money. So, you know, like we won the court case, got our money back. Thank you, Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, and I heard that they covered it because they were doing Farm Aid. They first played it on Farm Aid. And they chose that song because it's the only song they all knew that was about a farm. So, you know, fickle finger of fate.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You know, it's...
Actually, Izzy Stradlin from Guns N' Roses told me that when him and Axl went to Los Angeles, they were staying. They slept on the floor of this guy's apartment, and this guy had 2 records. That's all he had. One was a Black Flag record, and one was the UK Subs Endangered Species, and they used to just play those records one after the other, one after the other. And in fact, Iggy Pop, who I used to play with, phoned me, and he had just done the Farm Aid thing. He phoned me and he said, "Hey, guess what? I've just done this Farm Aid thing with Guns N' Roses, and they did one of your songs, one of the UK Sub songs." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, and I was chatting to them afterwards, and they were saying they were thinking of recording it. So, I mean, you know, that was such great news. A, that they had performed it live in front of a huge audience in America. B, that...
Well, the world.
The world, yeah, because I think it was beamed throughout the world. B, that, you know, Iggy thought that that was news enough to give me a call and say, guess what? And thirdly, that they were going to record it, and which meant, obviously, financially, a very good deal for us.
I didn't like the way though. I didn't like the way though. Axl Rose after the last line is, and everything smells of horseshit down the fucking farm through the microphone. I thought that was
uncalled for, ungentlemanly conduct,
yeah,
Charlie.
yeah,
Yes, no Englishman would have done that.
Wasn't very dignified, I tell you.
Yes, give a good telling off next time you see him, Charlie.
Wouldn't happen in Cairo, I tell you. Party in Paris. That, I don't know, you guys have, you know, I don't know where you get all this stuff from, but there are little stories to these things, you know. But Party in Paris particularly, well, it all began long. No. Quick story, very quick story. Party in Paris. We were invited to a show, which was Debbie Harry. What's Debbie Harry's band? Blondie. And Stiff Little Fingers. I forget who was warming up for who, but it was in the Paris Palais. Yeah, I mean, it was an actual show, and we were invited. And
you wanted to go,
and we were going. You know, we were up there, and we were gonna get our train tickets and everything. And suddenly, our management decides that we're in the studio on them dates. So I go into a fit of depression, and I went home and just got my guitar and, you know, just like, well, my guitar, I played bass actually, but just on, just playing. And then my girlfriend turns around and says, "You can't play that in here, I'm watching Coronation Street." So I went in the bathroom and sat on the bath, on the end of the bath. And Party in Paris just came. It just, you know, that was it. Boom, 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 boom. And then I said to the guys the next day, I said, "Look, I've written this song, but you might not like it because it's a bit uppy. It's a bit like, it could be a pop tune or something, you know." And I played it to them, and they liked it, so that was it. So that's Party in Paris.
And it became a single, right?
Another true story. I used to go out with this girl in days where I won't mention, and she took a lot of drugs, and
pissed on you.
Also to get her quota, she kind of sold a few, and it was like, you know, this was the days in '77, the great unemployment, you know, and everything. No one had a job. So down where we lived in South London, you know, it was like, you know, the top job going was like drug dealing and stuff, and she just happened to be dealing some stuff, and thought, well, this is the future, you know, the girls, you know, leaving school, they're going, you know, they're tomorrow's girls, you know, all they got is this kind of, you know, that black market economy, you know, and that was basically about this, you know. Let me tell you about Warhead, right? It was actually the riff was written by Paul Slack, one of the back. That goes further back in Cairo. I think we can go to the Crimea. Paul Slack wrote this riff, wonderful riff, and he came into the studio while we were actually like cutting the second album. Said, I've got this wonderful riff, and we said, look, well, you can fuck off with this one because it's just too slow, and everybody hated it and thought, well, there's, boom, 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 boom. What's this? And we took a lunch break. I went down to the chip shop, got some fish and chips, and on the way back from the fish shop, this riff was in my head. Boom, 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 boom. I wrote Warhead, and that's it. I thought, look, I've got an idea for this song, and we done it, and that was it.
Stranglehold was one of the few, about half a dozen songs that were already written when I joined the band in '77.
We don't really like to remember the days. I mean, it goes a long way back. We're talking the 100 Years' War, Agincourt. We don't like to. It's not a good memory. Stranglehold. The English had a stranglehold on the French. There you go. But we don't like to remember those days. CID, wow. Well, we're talking prehistoric times.
That was Hastings, wasn't it, Charlie? That one.
Who wrote CID?
Norman Conquest.
Charlie wrote it
CID.
with somebody
How
else.
did who came up with the idea of the intro to CID, which is
That was
like
mine,
the end of
but
a song? Yeah, that's
CID itself was another one of the half dozen songs that were already written when I
We're
came
kind
in.
of, we're
Charlie
going.
had written that, but I took the I put a new intro on it so as it would become the opening song for the
which was an end of
for
a
the
song.
set. It was actually another end. It was an end of a song that I put on the it's just crashing and noise.
Great.
And the theory behind it, in a way, was that if the sound engineer if we hadn't got a sound check, when we got on stage, we just got on and we just made noise, and it gave the sound engineer a chance to check all the channels. And
But it was about, when you were a punk rocker in London, when there was only about 100 of you, and you looked so strange, and you went, like uptown like you do, and you down Piccadilly. If you're in Piccadilly, they thought, you were after drugs, so you were bound to get busted, So it was all good. So it was just a kind of, revolt against, being picked up just the way you dressed, really, like that. And being in serious trouble just for the way you dressed. And I think up north, like people up north of England, people think that, we've got it easy down here because up north, you don't just get arrested, you get beaten up too,
Live in a Car was another of the very, very early songs. I joined the band on a Wednesday sometime in 1977, and we had our first gig on Friday, and I had to learn half a dozen songs. We quickly wrote a couple more, and Live in a Car was one of those group of songs, along with Stranglehold and CID. And they're all very short songs, so our set weighed in at about 8 minutes, and we had a couple of residencies, so we played all the songs three or four times.
Yeah. If we saw the same people down the front, we go, look, you let the other people go down the front. And let's rotate. Yeah, it's like three shows in one night. Well, only like half-hour shows, but it was hard work. I Couldn't Be You was actually written by a friend of mine called John Presley, and a lot of people think that it's is that an Elvis song? But it was written by a good friend of mine called John Presley, who actually was our like first sound mixer guy, and he kind of wrote a few songs like that, and Warner Brothers, you know, like took songs off him, you know, and when the subs actually, this song was written in 1970, and like before the UK subs, I was in a band called the Subs in 76, and the Marauders in 77, and then before that, you know, like bands like Formula One, and I don't want to talk about it, but yeah, I mean, he wrote this song in 1970, so we were playing that kind of stuff, you know, like way beyond. It was called punk rock, and that's a lot of people's favourite track as well. Yeah.
Limo Life was, I had a riff, and it was a riff that, the kind of riff that Charlie really does well with. Maybe almost like a kind of Iggy Popish kind of feel, I don't know. But we did a demo of it in New York City, and the UK subs at the time didn't record it apart from that demo. We didn't release it for whatever reasons, and Charlie released the song as with his solo band, the Urban Dogs, but eventually we recorded it with the UK subs years later, and it's a pretty good time. Good time.
Recorded in New York.
Yeah, I said that. Yeah, the demo was in New York.
That's right.
The thing about Limo Life, why it is got that slow dragging beat. We were, I don't know if Nicky remembers, but we actually gone on stage and jammed it in New Orleans. Now the whole thing, you know, the New Orleans are very, very kind of sleaze kind of thing, and there's a, you know, we do soak in an atmosphere, and like it was that was a kind of sleazy little thing. Like we actually got on stage in New Orleans and jammed, and that's where Limo Life was born. But it wasn't until we went to New York, and I was out all night one night, and I was coming home, and like, you know, the steam comes from the manholes, and you know, oh, well, that's a ghost. Oh, yeah, steam rises in the night from the manholes, and steam
Drains.
rises like a ghost night from the manholes and drains, and then a subway train went by, and down below, and there's a rattle of a subway train, and you know, all these things. I was walking home, and you know, I had that song in my head, you know, like that riff in my head, and I thought, yeah, this is it. You know, and we went to the studio and wrote Limo Life.
I also think it's one of Charlie's best self-referencing lyrics as well, when the line, they asked me what I want from life, and I said I would like a cup of tea.
I did actually. It was I'd like a pint of whiskey, but you know, it got edited out.
No, but I mean, people think that always see the end result of a band on the road. There they are up on stage, but they don't see you travelling through the night and not getting any sleep and missing one out, a night's sleep, 1 in 3 nights of not sleeping, and you know, so some of the, I can really relate to some of Charlie's lyrics on Limo Life. I think the chorus is.
He doesn't even drink tea.
All
I mean, think about it. It's called Limo Life, and we're talking about the UK subs here.
Yeah,
you know.
But also, you know, I was coming home from you know, a bar or a gig, you know, in New York, you know, where the city that never sleeps, 5 o'clock in the morning, and this is happening. The first subway trains running again, and or they run all through the night there, I think. But and I was the only person in the world. The only person in the world, and you know, this is a city where it never sleeps, but you know, it did. Slept very well in New York.
You don't belong that well. That's Nicky again. So
you played on it.
Yeah,
Your memories of it. Your memories of how it came out.
Just I remember you coming up with that riff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really.
The thing is about Steve, right? You know, like we write these songs, you know, and get in the studio, and he just, you know, the guy is so I don't know, he's just got so much natural talent. He just gets up there and he just does it. You know, it's not a big deal to him, you know, like he just gets up there and the song's there.
Well,
You
Nick
know,
came
like
up with
that.
the riff. You came
I
up
know,
with the riff.
I know, but you just
and
get
it
on
was like
drums
down, and it's like a drummer's dream.
It's like a...
because it's like down.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
powerful, you know.
Yeah. But a lot of these songs we're doing tonight, Stevie's, you know, like stamps his, not only, you know, like his style on them, you know, like...
I just wanted
so
to stamp
heavily.
some power on that one.
And no one else can do them. We do them with other drummers, and it's just, we might as well not do them, and we don't. You know, it's just tonight they come alive, and you
actually
know,
on a couple of the songs that I wrote for Endangered Species and Diminished Responsibility, I felt that Steve's playing was so integral to what I'd done that I credited him as a co-writer, because if it was just somebody going bum tap bum tap bum tap, it wouldn't be the song it was, you know. So there's a couple, I think, Confrontation, a couple, we're actually not doing them on this set list, but there's another thing about You Don't Belong, and it's one of the few things that Charlie has played rhythm guitar on live. And,
Oh yeah, I remember that.
we went through a period of trying it, but the logistics of it made it quite difficult.
I'm a bluegrass guitarist, no Woody Guthrie, Carter Family, or nothing.
We had we decided to put a phase shift pedal on it to give it some kind of maybe to blur it a little bit. And some nights
To disguise it, I think is what
But
they
you
say.
unplugged him sometimes.
some nights the control was set so far over that we'd start the song and Charlie'd start with the rhythm guitar. It's only 2 notes that are open notes, and the guitar'd sound like this.
Yeah. Sounded like he'd fallen into the Thames
just
and he was
a-
playing it from the bottom of the
Yeah,
river.
so that was an experiment. That, I mean, part of it is just logistics of having another guitar and another amplifier and stuff like that.
Part of it's Charlie.
Yeah.
Have a great gig tonight. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome, Charlie Harper, punk legend. In a couple of hours' time.
I think that's the wrong pronunciation there. It's leg end.
In a couple of hours' time, here at the Marquee in Islington, you'll be taking the stage with your 20-year-old lineup band. Started in 1980. Is that right?
That makes it 22, I think.
Right, 22. and it's basically it's the 25th anniversary of UK Subs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take me back to where it all started in your hairdressers with rehearsals? It's a lovely story to a punk band. It began in a hairdresser's.
Taking me back to Cairo, are you? Oh. Yeah. Wow.
Did it all begin in a hairdresser's?
Well, yeah, but it's confusing, you see, because if I ever start singing, start talking about them days, that was back in 75, 6.
Right.
Like it's even like before the birth of UK
And that was the
Subs.
day of the Subs. You were
And,
called the Subs at that point. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it was the Subs first of all, then it was United Kingdom Subversives, and then the UK Subs. Is that right?
It was never the United Kingdom Subversives so much as we never mentioned it. That was the idea which UK Subs stood for, but if you want to go into all these boring details, we were called the Subs, and Subs was short for Subversives. And then when Nicky came along, and also Nicky came along in like really early in '77, I think, or maybe late in '77, I can't remember. But it was a winter time. I think it was like late '77 or... Never mind, it was winter time and there was a Scottish band called the Subs, and they rescued these old ladies from a snowdrift outlet, got them out of their cars and rescued from it for a snowdrift and certain death, and they were on the front page of the Daily Mirror, and this band called the Subs got a record deal with Stiff Records, and luckily they made a god awful first single, and they just fell apart, and nothing happened to the subs in Scotland. Meanwhile, we changed our name. We hearing this and reading this thing on the front page of the Daily Mirror about this band called the Subs in Scotland. I'm going, oh dear, we've got to change our name. What can we do? And I said, well, yes, Anarchy in the UK just come out. Let's call ourselves the UK Subs. And that's what happened.
And before that, in the 60s, incredible rock and roll story here, Charlie, which is that Rod Stewart busking, you bump into Rod Stewart, and Rod Stewart tells you a lot about how to play harmonica. Is that about right?
Well, we were buskers, yeah. I mean, Rod Stewart was like pretty amazing, you know. I mean, he played like real good guitar and a strap harmonica, and he was in a band. I think they were called the Five Dimensions. If you look up in the ancient history, and he used to play down King Collier's Jazz Club with this band called the Five Dimension, and he was the fifth dimension, and he sat on a bar stool on stage and played a harmonica, and that was his like little kind of evening job kind of thing, you know. And if I can say, you know, I mean, there are stars on the street, right? You know, we're on the street, and there are stars on the street, and the stars on the street were these guys called Emmett Hennessy, London Irish, I'm afraid, but and Ray Sohn, and they used to kind of Emmett Hennessy had a great voice and played a great flat pick guitar. His idol was Ramblin' Jack Elliott, and he was playing all this kind of old stuff, Woody Guthrie and Ramblin' Jack Elliott stuff. And then Ray Sohn played harmonica, and he was totally into Sonny Boy Williams, not Sonny Boy Williams, Sonny Terry, you know, Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. You have to be pretty old to remember this stuff, you know. And so he had this kind of Sonny Terry thing going, you know, with this great flat bit guitar of Emmett Hennessy. And they were like the stars, the buskers, you know. I mean, sometimes they played in clubs, and the crowds came to see them.
The 100 Club, something like that, yeah. The 100 Club did they play at the 100 Club, that kind of thing? Or?
No, that was a jazz club at the time.
Right.
Yeah, that was just a jazz club.
Yeah.
And but they played down this place called Ken Collier's Jazz Club in Leicester Square, and that's where the Rolling Stones had their first residency, like every Friday or something. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they did play around a kind of folk circuit later on, but one of their acquaintances, I was a bottler. I was collecting money for them. So as they played, you know, and the crowd came around, I would collect money for them. And that was my apprenticeship into music, you know, when I was a kid, you know, just collecting money for these guys. And then, you know, we got more and more friends, and I started to play harmonica and stuff. And then, you know, R&B came, you know, the kind of folk thing kind of didn't really die down, but R&B came along, the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds and the Minor Sect and all those, the Kinks. And
you were very much part of that, weren't you?
Well, I did play harmonica in a rhythm and blues band.
What was
the
it
start of my into kind of the whole music scene.
Right.
But
and what was that band called, Charlie?
The first band I was in.
Yeah.
Well, again, it was called. It wasn't my band. I didn't name this band. It was called the Steel Hummers, after a Woody Guthrie song called "Hobos Lullaby," and there was a line in "Hobos Lullaby." And it went, "Can you hear those steel rails humming? That's the Hobos Lullaby." And and this is where this band got their name from. And we were kind of from a bluegrassy to a real full-on R&B, you know. And I kind of played, well, like said, we were down watching the Rolling Stones or the Down on the Set and the Yardbirds, and you know, like we all used to go down there, and I used to play along, you know. And then Rod Stewart came up to me and goes, "Oh, you know, like you want to, you know, like suck it, not blow it, you know, to get that bluesy sound." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he got my harmonica and like just saying, "Wow," you know, and like, "Oh, tell me how to do this." And he said, "Well, you just suck it and bend the note," and he showed me how to do it. And I said, Rod Stewart had taught me how to play harmonica proper.
Right.
And
you said, Charlie, that punk is a poor man's blues. That's one of your Charlie Harper quotes. And blues has very much been, you know...
Well, that's why I said it. The whole kind of thing was a kind of... it wasn't remodeled or anything on the 60s or on the blues scene or anything like that. But it was another, you know, like the working man's music. You know, it's the working man's music coming through rather than... people like playing pop music who are kind of musically trained down from the classical from orchestras into bands and into pop music. This was a kind of working people's, you know, music, you know, from just, you know, a cheap £8 guitar, you know, upwards from the other direction. So it was like something coming up from the left field, you know, like the blues did come from the left field, you know.
Yeah. And just on about the roots of punk and where it did come from musically, a lot of people say the Stooges, Iggy Pop, that was that kind of thing.
Yes.
There's one quote I saw recently by Debbie Harry when she said in New York in the early 70s that the big thing that everybody was knocked out by was when Dr. Feelgood went there and toured for the first time and they heard that sound. So there is this blues element, rhythm and blues element that is there at the bedrock of punk. Would you agree with that?
Well, what I always say is whenever a catastrophe happens, there's not just one reason. They say, oh, everyone's looking for a reason. There's not one reason. When a catastrophe happens, there's a few factors involved which coincide at the same time. And this is what makes like a great movement like the you know, like the punk movement. There was the art movement coming on and thinking, you know, left field or whatever, you know, like you know, what is art? They would question what is it, what actually is art, you know, and you know, you got it down now to Tracy Ullman's Bed or you know, like whatever, you know, in the art world now. But you know, they were punk rockers, but
Tracy
they were young.
Emin, that's right. Emin.
Tracy Emin,
that's right.
yeah.
She's with the dirty knickers on the bed.
You know, what is art? You know, and what we were thinking, and we were actually, you know, like trying to make a bit of kind of straight art then. But now they're taking it literally now, you know, like, right now. So when people say that music can't change the world, or you know, like, and the Beatles said, you know, we're not changing the world. I think punk rock came about and said, we are going to change the world. We want to change the world, and we're going to change the world, and they did.
Right. And your debut album, the UK Subs debut album, again, blues features in it, another kind of blues. Now, what were you saying in that? You know, as a title for a punk album?
Yeah, you were saying before that about it started in the hairdresser shop. Well. A little while before that, we were getting together with some who were like former like student hairdressers, you know, who worked with me, and then they, you know, they went into, they got good jobs in town in London, and you know, they got very successful, you know, and we used to go around with this just like crowd of lesbians and gays, and very colourful people, and took us to all these like great clubs. And there's one club called Shagaramas, which was a lesbian club, and if you look pretty gay like we did, you know, like there's no problem to get in there. And every Friday they'd have a live band. Fridays, Saturdays have a live band, and so we go down there, and suddenly it was taken over by the Roxy, and the guy had live bands every night. And I used to say to my band, like, you got to come up and see this. This is the future of rock and roll. This is where it's going, you know. And because, you know, I was already pushing 30 and they were just kids, you know, at school. And you know, they had to go to school the next day and stuff. So, you know, they were reluctant to come up. But one day they did, and it just happened to be the Damned's night at the Roxy. And it just blew them away. And they said, look, we got to form a punk band. And I said, well, no. I said, I love this stuff, but I'm a bit old for this, you know. It's not really my bag. I'm too old for this stuff. It's too energetic, you know. And but I was thinking of in terms of actually playing, and I didn't think I'd go in it to be singing, you know.
Yeah.
As in playing, it was just too far, so I just couldn't handle it. But I could sing it okay, but. And that's how it started. You know, they just said we want to be a punk band.
Right. And another thing that I've read about what you said was that as you saw it, after about a couple of years, punk did actually split into two divisions, if you like, two sort of areas. You mentioned that the Sex Pistols and the Clash were pseudo art punk. That's a Harper
very
quote.
Art school college. I mean, I don't know why they kind of had it in for students, because they were all fucking students, all clever fuckers.
And then
I don't think the press liked it, because we actually did come from the gutter, and we are a bunch of, you know, like drunks and gypsies and buskers, and I think the press really didn't like that when we come up from the gutter, and you know, the only way was up for us, and they totally tried to ignore us until there was just too many people trying to get into our shows, and that was it. You know, they admitted they couldn't ignore us anymore. You know, so. And
then the other area was, you know, very much Jimmy Percy and Sham 69.
Well, that was another lot of gutter snipes.
So there were pseudo punks and there were gutter snipes. Is that?
Yeah.
Because you're saying, you
we're
know,
happy to be a gutter snipe.
If I can just wind up by, we were talking about the Roxy, and a quote by Paul Weller. The Roxy myth is a load of bollocks. It was never a working class street club. It was full of bourgeois idiots dressed up in Nazi gear. Charlie, what do you say to Paul Weller?
Too true, but didn't we love it? You missed out, Paul, and you're jealous.
Charlie Harper, thanks very much indeed.